So it's 10 o'clock and good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Meet the Masters Zoomcast. This is going to be an exciting time, an exciting day. We've never done this before, so this is something very new. We'd encourage everybody that's with us today to have their cameras on, please, and so we can see you, see your reactions. And if you have any questions throughout the session today, just put your little hand emoji up, or actually type them in the chat box, and then Lindsay will help us out with that. Here from the Benefits Trust today, Lindsay Gibson is in the house. We've got Mike Ignatz, Jordan Bolhos, and we've got Carrie Lane somewhere. There's Carrie. Carrie Lane's in the house, so they're going to be monitoring the chat box with your questions and answering them if they can, if you've got a specific question. But if there's a theme, we'll certainly ask the masters about this. Before we begin as well today, I just want to make a really quick announcement, something that has happened today that we're really excited about. But the Benefits Trust has been named by Benefit and Pension Monitor magazine as a top provider in 2024. So that's something that we're really proud of and really excited about. So you hear more about that today, I'm sure, in your inbox. I thank everybody for that, because it certainly wasn't just one person's effort. It was a lot of effort. So that's great. These Zoomcasts started a number of years ago, and they're not about being the smartest person in the room. They're being in a room where everybody gets smarter. I started in this business in 1988, and one of the things that I loved about it was how we share information, and that's what really the spirit of today is. It's about sharing of information. So for participating today, the session is going to go a little bit longer than normal. We're going to go till 11:30 because we got a lot to talk about. So we're going to get 1.5 CE credits for participating today. Mike Ignatz is going to send that out. As well as participating today, you're going to get signed up for a Trusted Advisor newsletter, and you're going to get a really short survey. Because this is the first time we've done this, I'd love to hear your feedback in this really short survey. It's about 90 seconds. Tell us how we did today. Tell us how we can do it better tomorrow. Tell us if you'd like to see this type of thing again, because I think it's really exciting. As I mentioned, we've been doing these Zoomcasts for a number of years now, but this year I was talking to our marketing department about this. And this year, so far, we have sent out 2,593 CE credits. So we're here to support you, and we work with advisors like you, and we'd love more support from you, because we're open for business, and we still have some 2024 inventory on the shelves, and we've got the new inventory for 2025 in. So we'd love to continue working with you in the future. So we're really excited about the future, especially since we've received this top employer, our top provider award, as well as the top employer in earlier on in September. So this is the first time we've done this. It's unscripted and unplugged. I got the idea from Lawrence Geller. Lawrence Geller has been running a series since January 1st on Meet the Masters, and it's one master of insurance that's interviewed by either Lawrence or one of his friends. And they've got different masters of insurance, but we want to make this specific about group insurance today. I'm going to introduce our four speakers. One thing that's interesting about these four gentlemen is I've asked them to come. They immediately said yes, and I greatly appreciate their taking the time out of their schedules to help us all out, and it's really helping us all out today. So I'd like to introduce them. First off, we're going to do this in alphabetical order, and gentlemen, if you could not or unmute yourself, that would be great. First up, we've got Michael Barrow. Michael Barrow has been an advisor for many years. He started off with a large insurance company, and he's been an advisor for many years on his own. And one of the scariest things, I've heard this through the grapevine, but one of the scariest things that Michael did is he's got a beautiful wife and two beautiful children, and he left that salaried position at an insurance company and joined, started his own shop, hung out his own shingle when he had, a huge amount of responsibility, and he's got giant cojones to make that happen. And so, Michael, thank you very much for joining us, and tell us real quickly about your business.
Well, sure. I guess my history is a little diverse. Started off as an insurance company as an underwriter many moons ago. We won't put years on it, but it's been a few. Also had a benefit of working with some big consulting firms and some smaller consulting houses. But prior to going off on my own business, I did work for Manulife for about 10 years as an account executive. And so I've been on my own now for just under 9 years, which has been the best 9 years ever. Not gonna lie. And it's been a great experience.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Look forward to hearing from you in a few moments. Next up, we've got Mr. Derrick Gleed. Derrick Gleed is in the house. Derrick and I have known each other for, geez, it must be 30, probably more than 30 years. I've had the pleasure of knowing Derrick. Derrick has always been a great resource to me and a great friend as well. Derrick, tell us a little bit about your business.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks for having me this morning. Well, it's been a long road, 41 years in the industry. Started off, approached my father, who was a legend in the business, and listened to his advice as he said, "Go to London Life when you're 21, learn how to knock on a door, sell at the district, what was called then the district sales division." And I did that for 3 years, learning how to sell. And then I met a guy named Joe Wellman and went to work for Provident Life in what would be called today a wholesale function at a disability carrier. Had the pleasure of meeting Lawrence Geller and learned a ton from him, and continue to watch what Lawrence does from the sidelines. And then proceeded to go to PPI after that career at Provident, and worked at PPI Financial for some time in a consulting role, and then proceeded to go on my own about 20, almost 25 years ago now, when I built my practice from scratch and having a great time doing it.
And here you are. So thank you very much for joining us. Next up, we've got Chris Gory. Many of you know Chris. He's a vocal member of our community, without a doubt. Chris and I have known each other for probably 15 years, maybe even longer. I'm not sure exactly. But a couple of exciting things about Chris. Chris recently won an award as well as a top advisor. Tell us about that, Chris, and tell us about your business.
Thanks, Rob. The business got into insurance back in '95, dating myself, working for Applied Systems, the largest P&C software provider. Went to my ex-wife's P&C brokerage in '97, got my life license in '01, started working in benefits in '04, '05, give or take. And I work with nothing but startups. Wrote my first startup client in 2006, and still a client to this day. Work with about 120. Been an advisor at tech incubators, and I am a nerd at heart. I fully admit that. Used to be able to code way back when, but not anymore. And the award, yeah, it was an award from BPM. They have sounds really weird, the hot list for 2024, and I somehow made that list. How I'm on a hot list, I don't know, but I am for this year.
Well, that's great. Congratulations, and thank you very much for joining us. A little tidbit of information. Chris is getting married on December the 8th, so we congratulate him on that, which is just awesome. So he's just gotten off a cruise last week, I think it was, and now joining us today and getting married next 2 weeks from now. And last up, just because it's alphabetically, Mr. Balake, Blake Waddell, is in the house. An interesting tidbit about Blake. Blake and I had the pleasure of playing golf together this summer, and without a doubt, it was one of the finest golf courses I've ever played. And Blake, tell us why you're here and tell us about it. Tell us about your business.
Well, thanks. Yeah, so I'm here. So back in 2008, I got into the group benefits business. I owned a restaurant before, and I think I was tired of working 70 hours a week for less than minimum wage. So it was probably time for a career change. So I joined the family P&C firm, and their goal was to grow out the group department. So kind of from 2008 to 2024, we've been doing that. So we're now a team of three. And I've purchased the P&C as well. So we now got kind of both companies. We're running under the one umbrella. And it's just been awesome.
It's just been awesome. So why I chose these gentlemen, because they're great practitioners, but they're all coming from the benefits business at a different direction. Blake's, growing out the benefits business from a P&C perspective. Chris is dealing with a lot of startups. Michael Barrow had that opportunity to come from, a mainline insurer as an account executive. And then Derrick, bounced around as a wholesaler and then was working with top advisors at PPI and learned from Lawrence Geller and then started his own business some 25 years ago. So everybody's coming at this from a different direction. So I thought these four particular gentlemen would share their insights today, and we could have some great conversations. One of the things that I did is when we put this together at the Benefits Trust and thought of this idea, I thought we'd do it a little bit differently. Instead of sharing questions in advance, I just wanted to hear what's on their mind. So I have not prepared these gentlemen with any questions in advance. I have just said, hey, great. What we are going to do is we're just going to have a conversation. And I'm just going to ask some questions and let's hear what's on their mind. The other thing is we're not going to ask gentlemen the same questions in the same order so they don't have time to think about it while one is answering that question. So let's jump right into it. We're going to stick around here till about 11:30 and have a great conversation, hopefully. And let's start things off because Blake was the last to introduce himself. Blake, I thought I'd start with you. Tell me, what do you think the characteristics of a great client are?
The first biggest thing we look for is are they good listeners? Are they looking for your advice? Do they want you to kind of guide them through the process? Or are they just saying, this is what I want, give me the lowest price type thing? So the first thing we really look for is how engaging are you with us? How much you're going to be valuing us and our advice and what we bring to the table? And just transparency as well would be the other thing, which is just part of that process.
The sharing of information. If someone doesn't listen, hey, Blake, thanks a lot for coming in. Listen, I don't want to hear this. Just get me a price. How do you feel about that? What happens?
A lot of the times we say there's lots of brokers out there for you and kind of good luck choosing from them out there. That's one of the lines I wish I knew earlier in my career, back when I was really trying to build up the block, was now when someone doesn't get me all of the information I need, I love saying to them, look, it's going to take you about 5 minutes to put together everything I need to give you a quote. If you're not willing to spend 5 minutes to give me what I need, I'm not willing to spend 4 or 5 hours to put together a quote for you. And I think that really changes the table into okay, he's going to be investing time in me. I need to make sure I invest time in him.
That's a great answer. I love that. Thank you. Chris, what do you love about the business? What do you love about the benefits business?
What do I love about the benefits business? Love the people. I love the people. I love the people I work with. I love the people in the community. I'm lucky enough that with the tech companies I work with, they're really concerned about taking care of their staff. So they're always looking at, new ways to take care of them. So I love that. I don't know, Rob. It's the whole thing. I get frustrated with parts. I get frustrated with renewal pricing. I get frustrated with some of the clients that Blake just referred to. The ones you sell on price, you lose on price. But the things I love far outweigh the things I dislike.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Hey, I love my wife, but I get frustrated too, right? I see some other people nodding their heads, right? Michael, tell us a great new sales story. You got a new sale. Tell us a great new sales story.
Okay, well, a great new sales story for me is actually about perseverance and patience, in the sense that the sales cycle that we have come to know and love, some of it is very quick and easy, some of it is long and drawn out. And this one's a long and drawn out one where a client of mine came on board just this past year, actually. I've been working on them for 8 years, in the sense that I worked with them as an account executive at Manulife, and their HR department are fantastic, and they loved working with me at Manulife. But when I went off on my own, they had some political issues, if you will, with their existing advisor, and they didn't want to move at that point. So again, like a good account executive and a good advisor, you just kind of keep in touch with them gently over the time, just kind of keep your name in front of them, send them stuff over time. And I guess it was probably at the end of last year, they reached out to me and said, hey, we're ready to go. And they made the move, and it's a large client. And so it was a kind of a big win, great story from my perspective, that again, showing the patience and just being present, not pressuring them, was in this case the right tactic, and it worked out great.
Perseverance, right?
Yes.
Get around, not burning any bridges, right? And actually, Derrick, I got a follow-up question to that, and I just got to find it here. But how do you know, Derrick? How do you know when? And again, you've been around a long time, and you've sold different things over the career and so on. But how do you know when a prospect is no longer a prospect and just wasting time or wasting your time?
Usually, it's fairly early in the sales cycle. I'm always intrigued and listening to others' comments about this process, because I believe in what's called a 9-second diamond. and you have a pretty good connection with somebody in the very early stages of your conversation. And if you can make a connection with an individual or a group of individuals in a very short period of time, your chances of success improve dramatically. But if you don't make that connection, and if you're not engaging in conversation with folks, I guess over the years I've found that it's best just to, talk about the Blue Jays and the Leafs instead of about business.
Great. Now, has that changed over time? Like,
Well, for me, it certainly has changed over time, and I mean, I'd be the first to admit that when I first came into business, especially as a 21-year-old coming out of university with London Life, you would chase anything that moved, and if somebody could make a mark on a mirror, they were a prospect. But over time, even when I first left PPI and I was building my business, I would be chasing it as much as I could. And initially, I worked on the basis of my living benefits background allowed me to work with advisors to work on split cases. And I kind of built my practice that way. I had a lot of connections with a lot of senior advisors around the marketplace, so that helped. But as I evolved in my practice, I guess I just with age and experience, I just you know didn't really want to spend a lot of time chasing things that weren't chaseable. And that may sound arrogant to some, but I think it's just more of an experience thing and understanding that if you don't make that connection, you probably aren't going to make it long term either.
Yeah. So I don't know, love at first sight. I fell in love with my wife the moment I saw her, and the moment I started speaking with her. And it was interesting that night. I called some of my friends and said, yeah, I'm done. I found the one. And just, I'm not saying love at first sight with clients, but you can read through the BS pretty quick, Derrick, would you say?
You can, and certain areas of business you may not be comfortable with. I mean, Chris talking about the tech firms, you're comfortable there, and you're comfortable talking the language of tech people. That's great. And for me, I work predominantly in the Durham region area. I have background. I had a bit of a time in politics, and so I got to know a lot of people in the Durham community, and so I can speak about things that are more local, I'm comfortable with, and you tend to have conversations with people that you're comfortable speaking with, and that becomes business more often than anything.
Great answer. Thank you, Derrick. Blake, tell me about when you were uncomfortable. Give us a situation you were uncomfortable in.
Well, there's certainly a lot of situations where that happens. I think there's a lot of times you're uncomfortable when it's a competitive bidding process and you know that you're just being used to get a quote and they're going to be going with someone else. I've had that happen a few times where you get that feeling, and some of the questions they're asking, you know that you're just being a pawn in the game. And I think a bit like Derrick was saying, like back when I started, right, you were chasing anything that had a pulse, trying to get quotes without full data sheets and stuff. And now it's having those real awkward talks with clients as to, hey, look, I don't think that everything's being put on the table here. Can we dig a bit deeper and find out what actually is going on, or is it better if we just part ways? And those are not fun conversations to have.
Yeah, they're uncomfortable. Yeah, without a doubt. How do clients react to that?
Depends on the client, right?
Sorry.
Client, right? So I mean, like we had one client who, they were a roofing company, and they ended up with two big Hep C claims when all those Hep C drugs first came out. And they said, well, we've got a numbered company that we can just run payroll through, so let's just quote it out as a payroll group and just do a virgin quote. And I just immediately said, like, we're not the broker for you. I said, well, we'll be on until renewal. We'll let the insurer know that we're on until renewal, and then kind of we're out. And they got really mad at us. And I just said, like, what you're doing is not ethical, and we're not okay with that.
Yeah. It's a great story, because it's you got to get up and look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, and that's, yeah, they're trying to steal. I call that stealing. They're trying to steal from somebody. Right. Chris, what's your biggest challenge right now?
Sifting through the AI bullshit. How's that, Rob? There are
Tell us
so
more.
many.
Tell us more.
I mean, I'm AI fatigue. Working with tech and being a one-person operation, you're always trying to streamline your operations. And I'm, God, I subscribe to all these different newsletters that come out 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock every morning. And I got one yesterday that just killed me. It said that AI was more accurate than a medical doctor in diagnosing conditions. It's
Okay.
there's just too much information out there. It's too much of a buzzword. So you want to come up with these new ways to streamline your operations, but where do you get that good information, that good quality platform, that good quality tidbit you can use in your operations? To find that is the biggest challenge right now, Rob.
Yeah, well, because you're in the technology space and you see a lot more technology than we do. AI is certainly the big buzz on the street right now, and how it's going to change the world and how it's going to change everything. How are you using AI specifically in your practice?
A couple different ways. So I actually went and hired a company out of India to develop a couple AI things for me. One I'm working on right now where they can lift coverage out of booklets and create one-page summaries in about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So you just upload the booklet, it lifts the coverage out, and creates a one-page PDF listing coverage details, so you can give that to plan members. That I think is a great tool. One tool I came across, thanks to Mr. Patriarch, was there's a platform called Draftable, not AI based, but the great thing is when you do a contract amendment, sometimes there are some changes snuck in there that you're not aware of. So you can upload a new copy of a booklet, and you upload the old copy side by side, compare the two, and see where the differences are. And there's going to be some hidden little tidbits in there that you weren't made aware of. So not AI, but think about how long it takes time to compare an old booklet versus a new booklet, or an old policy versus a new policy, saving me hours.
Well, that's awesome. I love that. Love that. What's it called? Draftable?
Draftable. Yeah. If you go to Draftable and you click on the online version, they limit you to 5 a day or something of the sort. Just upload the old booklet and the new booklet and side by side. And as you scroll down, they scroll down in both booklets so you can see page by page where the changes are, and it highlights it. So not AI, but it saves a lot of time.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Thanks for sharing. Michael, sitting
Sure.
over there. I have a question for you. We were talking earlier about sales cycle, and you were talking a moment ago about 8 years it took for this particular client to get to the yes, right? And sales cycles are different with every single client. I know over the years I've seen sales cycles be, I call them one meeting sales, which is awesome, and others have taken 8 years, right? How have you gotten to yes quicker over the years?
That's a good question. I would say that when it comes to obviously showing value, all right? Again, some of the things that we talked about through the CJB, some of the differentiators as an advisor to help the end user, the client that we're talking to, the prospect, see that there's more to it than just price, all right? And so when you kind of bring in value to say, okay, here are some liabilities, and there are a couple liability stories that I always use that, again, put the fear of God in the client, but there are very easy fixes, right, that we talk about. And once they kind of realize that there's more to it than just the number that they're paying, and that it can also, of course, improve upon that, but bring more to the table, that has shortened the cycle more so for me.
Yeah, so it's adding value, showing value.
Showing value, yeah.
Can you share one of those liability stories with us?
The one I always use, or quite often, is when it comes to travel out of country, where there's a stability clause involved. So you always ask them if they know what the stability clause is for their out of country. Most do not. And then you kind of explain what the stability clause is about, and then kind of give them a little story about, okay, if someone had a visit with their doctor within the last 30 days, 90, 60 days, that changed their medication and actually improved their medication dosage from what they were using before. So it's a good story. It's like, hey, everything's going in the right direction. And they go and travel and have an incident that still can be tied to that condition. There's a risk that that claim could be declined. And if the employee is not aware of the stability clause, then they incur this cost. You as an employer are on the hook for a potential lawsuit because they believe they had coverage. So again, it's just talking about communication and how these things can help alleviate those risks for the employer.
I personally think travel insurance is one of the biggest. It used to be a throw-in in a benefit plan years ago. Now it's a huge benefit, but it's also a huge liability. And we're doing a session on December the 4th, I think it is, where we've got a specialist from Green Shield coming in and talking about that specific thing. Just because you have group travel insurance, do you really have coverage? Is ultimately the question, and it's a huge liability. And I think that's a excellent story. So thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you a question, Derrick. You've been doing this for so many years, right? Are clients loyal?
I'm sorry.
Are clients loyal?
Uh, if they're clients, yes. And I think that's the differentiator. A lot of people interpret customers as being clients, and customers are not loyal. Customers go wherever they're going to go. They migrate to price and so on. But a client is somebody you have a relationship with. Some people define it as being more than one product sale, et cetera, et cetera. I refer to it as having a relationship, and the stronger the relationship, the better the client. So they're loyal, by and large.
Do you think that has changed over time?
I do to a certain degree, Rob. I guess I mean, it has and it hasn't. I mean, a lot of the problems that we had with the pandemic is that we lost touch with people, and our business is a people business. It's a high touch business. And one of the things that I've always tried to do when it comes in particular group insurance or any business owner type of insurance, and that's where I spend most of my practice time. I like to go to see people at their site where they're working, whether it's a factory or an office. I want to see them where they are. And the pandemic, unfortunately, as we all know, disallowed that from happening. And I think there has been a bit of a disconnect that we're having to reestablish with in the business world with people, because now folks are more inclined to use this type of technology to communicate, and the loyalty and the strength of relationships is weakened as a result of it.
Yeah. So do you think if you're going out to see people, because you spend a lot of time, I know, on the road and still going out today to see people, you think that differentiates you from a lot of others?
Oh, I highly recommend it. People don't always have a lot of time, but if there's one thing a business owner likes to do is to tell you about their business. They love to talk about their business, how they built their business. And the only way you can really learn that is to be at their business and see how it operates. And I've just been a long time believer in that, and I still am. I always will be.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. I agree with you on that. I love going and seeing people, and that's something that I certainly miss. We got 100 and what is there, 135 people on this call. And actually, it's fantastic. We've got this opportunity. I don't know if we'd have 135 people if you guys were sitting on a panel on a stage. And this is a great time to introduce Dave Patriarch, who's not one of our presenters today. But Dave, where are you, Dave? I think you're here somewhere. David?
I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here.
yeah, you just had 150 people out at CGIB. Just tell us about that real quick. And those that
Yeah,
aren't.
we had about 170 actually registered, just over 150. It was fantastic. We had three great speakers and one so-so speaker, and talking about disability and building and adding value to your business and drugs and where things are going. It was a pretty good day. Amazing to have all those people in one room, and I mean, great to see all the connections that were made. People that hadn't seen each other in years and in some cases decades. So I'm all for getting people together and kind of doing whether it's business building, networking, or whatever.
Yeah. Blake, tell us.
And Rob, don't take my comments as being negative towards this format. I think this format has been a great addition from the pandemic, but we can't rely on it wholly. We need to get back to some of the basics.
Can I add one thing, Rob? Can I add
please.
one thing? Just and Blake can probably speak to this as well. I think insurance as a whole is slowly shifting to more of a commodity, especially in the larger city centers. I remember back, gosh, late 90s, early 2000s. As mentioned, my ex-wife has a P&C brokerage in Toronto, and she would have friends who had family brokerages outside of the city. And in Toronto back then, they would come in, it was a transaction. You did your auto, home, commercial insurance, whatever the case was. In the smaller communities, the Collingwoods and what have you, they would come in, they'd have a coffee, they'd sit down, they'd talk about how their families were doing, how their kids were doing. And fast forward 10 years, that was not happening in the Collingwoods of the world like it was 10 years prior. I think we're starting to see that in the benefits side. It's being treated more like a commodity than it was 15 years ago. Pandemic escalated that a little bit, but because of some of the new providers that we're seeing, some of the direct, it is being treated more like a commodity than it was back 20 years ago.
So do you see that as an opportunity? Or Michael, do you see that as an opportunity? First of all, do you agree with Chris's comments, and do you see that as an opportunity?
Yes and no. As far as the commodity goes, yes, it's definitely become more, and by commodity, a price sensitive view by those that are looking to add benefits, per se, and for sure. And with these new players in the market that are coming in to try and provide quick one-stop shop solutions, pooled products, things like that, to make it like a very easy move for a business owner, does provide opportunity as an advisor to, again, circle back to provide value and say, okay, is this product right for you? Is this solution right for you? What other solutions are there? Because again, when a lot of people probably have this conversation with prospects, especially the virgin groups, they always say that insurance is too expensive, right? And that's why they don't have it. And I go, well, then have you investigated it before? And more often than not, the answer is no, because they just understand it to be, they hear about health costs rising. And so if you can actually provide them, say, all right, well, let's just do the investigation for you, and provide the education, provide value, it does provide that opportunity. And if you can take advantage of that, you can actually win some of these virgin groups that can actually either be small groups that grow, they could be a medium-sized group already that didn't do it. So yeah, definitely opportunities there.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you. Let's switch directions a little bit, and let's talk about your business, your business, your practice, whatever it is that you want to call it. Chris, you mentioned you're on your own. Michael, you started a number of years ago. Derrick, 25 years. Derrick, tell me about your business practice. Do you look at your business as a business? Do you look at, are you working in your business or on your business? How do you delegate? Tell us about, sort of your business practice. Who do you delegate to, either inside or outside? And tell us sort of about the makeup of your practice, and who do you, or not who do you use, but what services do you use if they're not employees? Tell us more about your practice.
Sure. Well, I use Benefits Trust a lot. Very helpful.
Oh, by the way, sorry to interrupt while you're thinking about your answer there. Derrick and I have done some business together in the past, and of the other three gentlemen, I meant to mention this off the top. I do business with some of them, but not all of them. And I just respect everybody for their expertise. So this is not a commercial for the Benefits Trust by any stretch of the imagination. This is about sharing of information. So thank you. So Derrick, tell us about your practice and delegation and so on within your practice.
Well, I'll throw the commercial in whether you like it or not. Benefits Trust is the best organization I've ever had the pleasure of dealing with. So, and I say that with conviction. My practice is it's not sophisticated, pretty basic practice. I have relationships with a number of P&C people, for particular commercial writers, and they'll refer business to me. As far as our practice, there's a couple of advisors, I believe a couple of them are on the screen here somewhere, who put their business through. I have one lady in particular who is just a fantastic individual to work with, who will, God willing, will eventually take over my business. And she does all the administration, works very hard at that, and deals directly a lot with the clientele, as well as building her own clientele over time. So it's a combination there. In terms of what we write, I do focus on the small to medium sized business owners. I've done that for a long time now. And as I said earlier, I started my career in the living benefits side, specifically disability insurance, non-can disability. So that's my home base background, but I've evolved into the life business and planning area. And I use benefits with Benefits Trust in particular because I can work with the owner of a corporation, of a small business, and make sure that they're maximizing their tax opportunities as it relates to benefits. And that's the starter of conversations with people. Are they maximizing their Revenue Canada opportunities with their own benefit costs as the owner of a business? And things just evolve from there. So not sophisticated, not
But you do use outside help in this case with someone that you've partnered with, quote unquote.
Well, I do use a lot of outside help because I'm sitting in world headquarters right now, which is my home, and so outside help includes a great relationship with an MGA, a really strong relationship with a couple of insurance company wholesalers who do an enormous amount of work. Fantastic relationships with tax and estate planning lawyers and accountants to assist us with some of the planning stuff that goes on. And as I said, good relationships on the commercial side in order to get referrals coming in from commercial writers and people who are trying to build a fence around their clientele and basically working in a team area concept. Again, I'm not the smartest one in the room, but I do know my stuff that I know fairly well, and I bring people to the table that know their stuff really, really well, and together we can maximize the opportunity for the customer and for hopefully the client long term.
And Blake, you coming up from a slightly different perspective because you've got a number of staff. You've told me that, and in your operation. And how do you choose who does what, and what do you do? And tell us more about your practice.
Yeah, I think we're pretty fortunate because on the P&C side, we have a full-time accountant, so that kind of all the books and all of that stuff is just looked after in-house pretty seamlessly, which is nice. And same with all of the software and stuff we run. It's all P&C based, but it does work for benefits, albeit not the greatest, as Chris knows with his past with Applied. But and also you get to leverage a lot of that where we spend a fair bit of money in technology and the protection of data. And I think that's one of the most understated things in the benefits industry is the incredible wealth of data that clients are handing over to their broker. And they've never asked questions about how secure is this? How protected is that? And I think that's going to be coming down the pipeline in the next 5 or 10 years before you get a list with salaries and all of this incredibly sensitive data that's ever leaked would really compromise a company. I think you're going to start getting a lot more questionnaires as to what do you do with this data? How do you do it? And I know NDAs are becoming a lot more common now. In the last 3 or 4 years, I've probably signed more NDAs than I had in the last 10 years before then. And then utilizing an MGA as well. They're great back office help. And we have both Sophia and Paul at our office. I see you're both on this call as well. And it's always a team approach, right? It's always 3 heads are always better than one CGIB, 10 heads are always better than one type thing. It's always, if there's a problem, let's all pool our resources and get to the best solution. And you go from there.
And Chris and Michael, both of you I shouldn't say that. I don't know intimately about your practices, but tell me, the same type of thing. How are you delegating? How are you using others to help you and ultimately your clients?
Go you first.
Sure, I'll go first. I don't get to delegate. It's me primarily. So when it comes to coming from my business, yeah, I do all the things service related, financial related, all that kind of fun stuff. But I do lean on the relationships I have at my providers to be able to be good at what they do and to support me as needed. And again, a lot of it comes to training the client as well, in the sense that I've been very fortunate that I do not have very needy, service-oriented clients that email me, call me every day to do day-to-day issues. They're very self-sufficient. They understand the process of going to the carrier or the 1-800 numbers that are provided for service-related scenarios, educate their employees, and they come to me when something needs to be escalated, right? So I get to play with the numbers on the regular basis, which is where I want to play as far as the management of their program, things like that. So for me, yeah, it's more kind of the managing the business is educating the client to know where they got to go to for um, day-to-day service issues or some complex issues, and then leveraging my client, my carrier, our provider, account executives to help solve escalated issues. And the rest is, again, rests on my shoulders.
So if I hear you correctly, you're saying you spend a lot of time initially at the beginning of a relationship is managing expectations.
Yes, that's the best way to put it for sure. Have them understand how things work and to get the best value for time. Because again, you have an issue, you want to email me first, and I have to go to the same place you would go to. It just adds a step unnecessarily, delays times a little bit. So if you want efficiencies, here's how to go about it.
Awesome. Chris, you were going to jump in there?
Not much to add. One person operation, so I'm the chief marketing officer, chief revenue officer, chief washroom attendant. I
Chief
do it all.
complaints
So
officer.
exactly, I am HR, and I have lots of complaints against myself. I like everyone else. I use a group MGA for my back office, which helps immeasurably. I couldn't have actually had the growth over the last 7 years if I was not using a group MGA. Rely on them and rely on the relationships with the carriers. So.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're at a party, and the party is, choose a location. It's a holiday party. There's a whole bunch of people at this party that you don't know, Blake, and someone comes up to you and says, it's nice to meet you, Blake, because you're wearing the "Hello, my name is Blake" name tag, and it's nice to meet you, Blake. And tell me, what do you do? How do
So
you answer that? How do you answer that question?
did you ever watch that show Frasier?
Yeah.
So when Fraser was first interviewing Daphne, he asked her a question that said, "What's the best way to get rid of a coffee ring stain out of a coffee table?" What do you think? What would your answer be to that, Rob?
I try to, well, wipe it up. Oh, a coffee ring stain. Um,
Buy a new table.
I learned that just very recently, actually, what you do is you get a damp tea towel and you use an iron on top of it. And I have no idea. What's the answer?
So what we do is we actually give you a coaster before you put your coffee down, and we'll just design your insurance plan to make sure you don't have that ring to get out. So everything's set up properly in the beginning. You're not worrying about the after effects of that.
So you're telling a story to get to get an engagement, if you would, or telling a story to get to get more questions, and you're telling a story to create a conversation.
Yeah, and just kind of letting them know that what we do is we do the work up front so the tail end runs smoothly as well.
Yeah. So Derrick, we're at the same party. Someone comes up to you and says, what do you do, Derrick?"
I'm laughing because I remember back when I was 21 and 22 working for London Life, and you'd be at a party and somebody would ask you that, what are you doing for a living? And you say, I'm selling life insurance. You wouldn't believe how fast the room empties out. It's incredible. So I always laugh at that. But I've heard it's a great question, Rob, but you know, I find the easiest way to answer it is to say, I solve people's problems. And we work with folks to identify what the problem might be if you have a problem, and we fill the gaps. I'm an insurance advisor. I'm proud to say I'm an insurance advisor. I've been an insurance advisor my entire career. And saying that, and if it clears the room, then it clears the room. But there's usually one or two people that hang around to want to follow up on a conversation. So I always find that in our industry, when I started my career, we sold life insurance. And somewhere along the line, we got embarrassed about saying that, and we became advisors and financial planners and all these things. And no one's prepared to say they actually market life insurance or they market disability insurance. I'm proud of that. 41 years, I'm proud of it. And so if somebody asks me what I do for a living, I tell them I'm an insurance advisor. I solve problems.
Michael, how do you tell people at a party what you do?
The short answer is that I help protect an employer's most valuable asset, which is their employees. And
Great
then
answer. Great answer.
then he kind of spirals out of that, depending on how they want to follow up.
Awesome. Chris, being the tech nerd that you are, the self-proclaimed tech nerd, what do you
Oh
say?
yeah.
Because
Well,
if you're in these tech incubators, you know, I remember talking to some tech people, and I've asked them, what does they do, or what does their technology do, and I don't have a clue what they're saying. So what do you say?
I am a tech insurance nerd, former coder who helps startups. And just going back to Derrick's comment about being proud insurance advisor, yeah, when you see things like if you remember the movie Groundhog Day, and he's always walking back by that insurance advisor and
What
just
was it?
trying to get away from him as quickly as possible, Bill Murray, the
No, it was
movie.
Ned. I think his name was
Oh
Ned, the
yeah,
insurance guy, Ned something or
yeah.
other.
That doesn't give our industry a good name, a good viewpoint. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of the world views us. But I'm, proudly an insurance advisor at the end of the day. But yeah, I am a tech insurance nerd helping startups.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. So it's the 20th of November. Arguably, we have 4 weeks left until the world shuts down, or the insurance world shuts down, I should say. And then we're into 2025. So we're 11/12ths of the way there, and we're into 2025. Derrick, what are you gonna do, if anything, different in 2025?
Always a good question. You sound like a staff manager. What's your objectives going into 2025? The the thing is, to take off from what I said earlier about being an insurance advisor and being proud of that. I operate a business, and for me, January 1 is no different than June 1st. I run a business, and I operate a business the same as my clients do, and I approach it that way. What will I do January 1st? I'll be operating my business, looking for opportunities to learn more about my business, learn more about the clients that I'm hoping to deal with, and continuing to do it, God willing, for as long as I can.
Awesome. Michael, let's ask you the similar question. What are you gonna do different in 2025 that you did in 2024?
Different. At this point, not really sure in the sense that 2024 has been a good year, and so I'd like to do the same thing, to have 2025 be just as good. But I don't know. I think more so the ideal scenario is that you probably want to get back to attention to detail because some things what happens is people kind of get further along in their careers and they get a little complacent. And some of the things that made you who you are to start with, you kind of got away from as you kind of grow. So find some little things that I used to do at the beginning, that differentiated me. I'll probably try and revisit those and try and incorporate those into 2025 again.
Love it. So on that same or similar vein, Blake, are you successful?
I mean, there's lots of different definitions of success.
So how do you define success is ultimately my question.
Like I'd like to think of myself as successful, but it's hard to classify yourself as that, right? Because you're always trying to think of something different or something else. So that wouldn't be something I'd really label
Yeah, yeah.
myself.
Yeah, Chris, it was one of those AI questions I got, okay? No, but it's Michael said he had a good year. How do you define if things are running well or things are running poorly? Is it cash flow? Is it cash? Is it bottom line? Is it gaining 12 new clients? Is it meeting your goals? How do you define success in
I
your
think it
your business, in your box?
I think it needs to be defined pretty broadly, right? Because yeah, you always want to make sure you're growing. If you're growing, I think that's much more successful than not growing, that your staff are happy. But I think also, to me, a huge part of success is that like I'm taking my daughter to the barn 3 days a week. I'm never missed one of her recitals. And from a family perspective too, I would tie success into that as well, which is another great part about this industry is you get to grow a book, you get to grow a business, but you also get some freedom of time where if at 2 o'clock on some afternoon you have to do something, you can be flexible with your schedule and make sure you're there. And so kind of overall as a success That's more would be what I would strive to do, is make sure everything's growing, the business is doing well, but also personally and financially you're doing well too.
Chris, what about yourself?
Success is can be gauged so many different ways. Yeah, dollars and cents. What's your work-life balance like? And that's something I've struggled with, Rob. I'm not going to be on. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've struggled working, 12-hour days. So for me, this year was, yeah, the business is up, but my work-life balance suffered as a result. Had some personal things going on. So I'm looking forward to next year with watching the business grow, but getting work-life back in balance.
Great. Awesome. Michael, I have a question for you because you spent so long at a insurance company.
Hmm.
Manulife, you said Manulife, or did
Yep.
you not? Maybe I let the cat out of the bag. Sorry, I
No,
didn't
no,
want to say
no,
Manulife.
that's fine.
I wanted to say an insurance company that has a head office in Waterloo that has green in their logo. You worked for them. Um, but have in mainline insurance providers or insurance providers ever let you down? And how did you deal with that?
Uh, yes, they have let you down, and let you down in lots of different ways. And so the more serious ones are when they can't provide the solution they initially promised a client. And so that's a tough one. And so the manage to deal with that is you have two options. Either they find a way to uh, honor that promise to that client, or we have no choice but to go somewhere else that promise can be met, right? And so that's how you deal with some of those. Um, some of the situations that they let you down, again, subjective in the sense that, okay, renewals is another dandy where their pricing that they come out with and the negotiations that they come up with, I would say they don't negotiate in good faith, right? Some of the numbers you come up with are you show them, so you provide facts and they just don't take that into consideration because they have a different agenda that they have. And so again, pending my relationship with the account executive in place, um, you know, a more come to Jesus kind of conversation about what's reality here. And in the end, more often than not, I get much closer to what I needed and what I want and justified. But again, what I find challenging now is just even in the 9 years that I've been off on my own, it's harder work now to get to the right number than it was 9 years ago, right? So, and that's with providing them facts. Again, as an account executive, when I was at Manulife and prior, my biggest beef with advisors when it came to renewal negotiations was that they never provided a reason. Like, hey, I can't sell this is the worst negotiating tactic for an account executive ever, right? It's like, why can't you sell this? You've had a year or more of data available at you to provide your client heads up notice. Why haven't you prepared them, right? But as an advisor myself, since I take that tactic, I do communicate with my clients so they know what's going on. And so when you come to the insurance carrier to say this is what needs to be done, the hard work to get there is becoming more and more labor intensive. So that's kind of a letdown as well, right?
So do you think insurance companies' service levels have changed?
They certainly have, both from a financial perspective as well as just dealing with the plan members. You hear nothing but nightmare stories, and a lot of times when plan members are getting told incorrect information about their plan or about coverages they need or some certain things there. And that's happening more and more often. But again, when it comes to negotiations, like, I think there might be some guidance from the ivory tower saying, hey, even though they've built in profit in their target TLRs, we also know they have profit in their trend factors. We also have profit elsewhere. They're still looking to increase their margins on the small businesses, right? And so they're being a little bit less flexible, little less flexible than they have been. And so that's a service level challenge as well, right? So it's kind of a question of like, how do you go about dealing with that?
Now, Chris, you were laughing when I asked the question of Michael, about service levels in insurance companies. What's your experience been?
I find that as advisors, we're being pulled into the weeds much more often than we were 5 years ago, where plan sponsors are reaching out saying, "Hey, I never heard back. It's been 3 weeks on the status of this LTD claim," or, "Hey, I sent in this change form to the carrier, 4 weeks ago, and I haven't heard back." I'm seeing more and more of that. So I'm thankful. I'm not preaching CRMs, but I'm so thankful I've got a CRM that I document the heck out of everything, because we're getting involved. I don't want to say on the complaint side, but the operational side a lot more than 5 years ago.
Yeah, interesting. But does that create opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's going back to the conversation, clients versus customers. They're becoming more and more loyal to us when they realize we've got their back. We're there to step up for them and actually go to bat and get this straightened out. So it absolutely adds more value to what we do.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because I remember years ago talking about sales and talking about sales probably to an audience very similar to this. Maybe some of you were on the call, but I call it, it's like the directions on a shampoo bottle, right? Or how to write an essay, right? You tell them what you're going to do it, and then tell them what you've done. As we're getting close to the end of this year, it's like saying, "Hey, I have telling the client, hey, it's been good. The renewal is one thing, but I've dealt with 6 inquiries or 12 inquiries, or I've handled this problem or that problem." And you're again creating the value by showing them the value that you've prepared for them. So, Derrick, I got to tell you a quick story. I walked into a meeting 2 weeks ago with an advisor, and I walked into a meeting and they said, "We're searching for a new advisor." And this particular advisor was fairly, I don't want to say weak, but he knew what his strengths were. And he brought me in to help him with this particular meeting, and it was a nice case on the surface. But we asked a couple of questions, but they said, "We're interviewing 3 different advisors because we want to change advisors. And what is it that you're going to bring to the table?" And one of the ladies, the financial lady that was there, said, "We had this advisor that was as big as a mountain, and he came in and told me that he starts off the meeting with he takes 8 weeks vacation. Every plan has to be mandatory." And I'm going, "Oh my God, this is Dave Patriarch," right? So, and it was. I talked to Dave about it afterwards, and it certainly was. He was called to pitch the client as well. But Dave, and he's been very, very vocal about what his business rules are, and they're non-negotiable. Tell us about, do you have non-negotiable rules, or do you have any, like, tell us about your non-negotiable rules, or how you feel about those.
Non-negotiable rules. That's an interesting question. And Dave, I know how successful you are, so I'm going to say this with the greatest respect. Um, I I spent 5 years in politics, local politics. So non-negotiable rules really is sort of a negotiable connotation. Um, those situations where you walk in and the prospect identifies that they're interviewing 3 different people. I don't. There are times, and you say to yourself, I really like this situation. I want to pursue this. I want to try to compete for it. The one thing I would never do, cardinal sin for me, would be to compete on a price situation. I wouldn't even introduce product, and it kind of I can reflect on this a little bit, Rob. If anybody's a baseball fan, Major League Baseball right now is in the process of moving players around through free agency. And it's fascinating that free agency has been open for about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and none of the big free agents have signed a contract yet, but they're all talking to different organizations about where they want to play. And all these organizations are competing with each other, but nobody's competing on price. They're not competing on contract right now. If you look at the top players, they're competing on the basis of what can that organization do to improve my position as a player, improve my longevity, improve my ability to be the best player I can be in the major leagues. What is this organization going to do about winning? What are they all about? What's their DNA? What's their, who are they? And then at the end of it, they identify maybe two or three of those teams that they want to negotiate with, and then they'll sit down and talk about price. But applying it to what we do, it does speak to the fact that price is the last thing that's discussed. And so you walk into those situations and you do need to be somewhat flexible, but you need to learn about the client. You need to understand what their needs are, what their wants are. And if you feel you can match up to that, tell them what you're about. Tell them how you can help them. Tell them, what you've done in the past, about what you've done for other organizations that are similar to them, that that you highlight some of those things that you've done to improve those situations.
It's all about value.
And, then at the end of the day, if they say, okay, we're down to, one or two, or tell us what you can do, well, then you can start talking about product specifics and maybe even pricing. But yeah, I don't. I go with the flow, Rob. I don't have any hard and fast rules, but other than the fact that I only want to work with people that I'm comfortable working with and who are comfortable working with me.
Yeah. The only rule, thank you very much, Derrick. The only rule that I sort of follow, and it's something that I don't know where I picked it up, but it was very, very like at the beginning of my career. I said, I'm going to start in this business. I'm going to give it a try and see if it works out. Still undecided whether I'm going to stay in it. But because it's only been 35 years. But I said, I never want to change aisles. I never want to have to change aisles when I walk down a grocery store aisle. Like if I see someone that I'm doing business with, great. If I see someone that I'm not doing business with, great. Right. But I want to be able to shake their hand and say hello. Right. I never want to have to change aisles. So I never want to burn any bridges. And
No.
it's about honesty.
Right? If you're honest with yourself and honest with them, it'll all work out. But Rob, I go back to some of the things that you've driven home to me over the years, and you more often than not talk about the number of small businesses that exist in Canada.
Yeah.
Well, that's an enormous number. I have no grand illusion that I can deal with all of them.
There's 440,000 in Ontario, Derrick.
Yeah.
Have you got
I'll
Ontario wrapped up, right?
If I can deal with a handful of them, I will be financially successful, guaranteed.
So Blake, thank you very much, Derrick. Blake, you've got a business going. You've got P&C. You've got benefits. You probably have lots of clients, right? Big book of business, full filing cabinets. Tell me about the last time you were fired. What happened?
I was fired?
Yeah.
It never happened because right out of university, I worked for myself. And then,
No. When a client fired you.
oh, the client fired me. Well, it's usually by AOR, and usually they don't even return your call and when you get a chance to finally talk to them after, they're just like, I was embarrassed. This person promised me the world. I decided to move over to them, and I didn't even want to explain it to you. Is typically how we end up getting fired, and it's one of those things where kind of part of our whole discussion up front is let's just be transparent and honest. And so that's the part that kind of jerks me around is like, just to be transparent and honest about it then.
Did you get upset about it?
No, not really. The odd time. So only one time it really irked me. So it was a good sized client, about 150 lives. And they had an LTD NEM of 1,200 and an overall maximum of 2,500. Not a ton of huge high income earners. And 4 times a year, I would go in there and have them sign a letter that I've told them that they should either match the NEM to the 2,500, or I gave them 3 or 4 options of their LTD because it was just a time bomb waiting to happen. And then another broker went in who developed this cool little app that tied into ADP that would update the insurance company of any payroll updates right away. And so they're going to be moving over to this person because they've got this wonderful tool that they won't have to update salaries anymore. I was like, you understand you don't need to update any salaries. Everybody's getting paid 1,200 no matter what happens. This is kind of a pointless thing, but they were so impressed by this tool and they didn't listen to any of my advice. And that one really irked me.
Yeah. It's yeah. I hate the first of the month. I hate the first of the month because I get notices from our a particular person in our office that handles all the handles the terminations, and there's always a few a month, and it always irks me. Meanwhile, we've gotten 20 new clients this particular month, but you've lost three, and why did you lose that one? Right, but clients are like appliances. Clients are like appliances. You buy a fridge and you put it in your kitchen, and it works. And then all of a sudden, 7 years later, it goes, berserk on you for some way, shape, or form because the gigajoule broke, right? And you look at that and you try to get a repair person, which they don't have anymore, and then you go, I got to buy a new fridge, right? And then that gives you an opportunity to redo your whole kitchen because of the broken gigajoule. All right, but sometimes the fridge lasts a year, and sometimes the old faithful fridge lasts 30 years, and you plug it in every spring when you open the garage, and it's your beer fridge in the winter. But some, they come, they go. We can't get emotional about it, but sometimes they do work, right? Michael, what about you? You've been selling directly for 9 years, and I'm sure over that time you've had somebody fire you.
Well, yes, but the fortunate reasons that I've lost clients actually is, well, I can't call it fortunate. Um, they've actually kind of amalgamated with their P&C advisor, right? And they say they just want to do it. Yeah, thanks, Blake. They just do want a one-stop shop scenario, right? So, I mean, I get reassured that it's not anything that was done or not done by my service. So they let me down gently that way. They just want a one-stop shop. So even though we can all argue the fact that one-stop shopping is not always the most efficient for a client, that would be the explanation that's been provided to me on, I think, four occasions. But yeah, but outside of that, there's nothing come to me as far as a better, it's like Blake's scenario, a better product by someone else, or I neglected to do something that they really needed. So I've been fortunate that it hasn't been my fault
Yep.
to get fired.
Yep. So let me ask a question of all of you. And Chris, you are a techno nerd and so on, as you mentioned, right? But let's talk about social media. Social media has impacted the world without a doubt. It's impacted both adults and children and all the Gen X's and Gen Y's and Gen Z's and baby boomers and everybody, and in different ways. How has social media helped your business, and how has it hurt your business? Open question.
For me or for the group?
Open question to each of the four of you.
All right, well, I'll go first. It hasn't. In the sense that I don't use social media to promote my business, and that hasn't hurt me either at this point. As a sole proprietor, just one-stop shop myself, I have been, again, fortunate to grow at the pace that I need to grow, but in the early stages, you have these marketing companies that will do all the stuff for you and for a small fortune for a potential return that's not guaranteed. And so for me, at this stage of my development, that investment with the and impossible guaranteed return is too much for me to justify, right? And so I don't do it, and my kids are still fed and watered and dressed and roof overhead, so everything seems to be going well. So I personally don't see the need to go down that road.
Derrick, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'm smiling at this because if Rebecca is on this call, I think she is my colleague. She'd get a real giggle out of the fact that I'm answering a technology question. But when it comes to social media and anything like that, I always remember back that it was somebody who said to me early on in my career that insurance is sold. It's not bought. And social media is a great tool for some, and they use it very well. But I guess I'm like Michael that way. I'm old school, like see the people, and you can get caught up in social media. You can spend a lot of time in it, but is anybody really buying from it? I don't know. I haven't seen that it's successful that way in my area. I know people use it well and use it very positively. It just hasn't worked for me. It's not. I'm
Chris,
phased.
Blake.
The only way it's hurt me is my bank account. Because I've gone all in on platforms, and I've I've been doing Instagram, no leads from Instagram. I've been doing Facebook, no leads from Facebook. Twitter / X, whatever you want to call it, no leads from there. LinkedIn, get a lot of traction on LinkedIn. I've done LinkedIn marketing campaigns, geared for, again, being in tech. I've actually geared the campaigns for U.S. tech companies. I've had some where I actually got clients out of it. I did one campaign, 2020, and I still have two clients from that. But then I've also spent hundreds of dollars in other campaigns and didn't even get any leads. So for me, um, and I'm someone who I have probably post 12 to 15 times a month. The only one that's worthwhile is LinkedIn.
Blake?
Yeah, we're the same as the other three. Like I haven't done a social media post in probably a decade, so it's not something we've ever targeted or tried. But we've done a couple LinkedIn campaigns that have gone well, and that's pretty much been it.
Dave, you had your
Can I interject here that I saw in the chat box came up? Somebody asked, how do you prospect then? And that's a fair question. Very, very fair question.
Derrick, we forgot the rules here. I asked the questions.
Sorry, Rob.
What I was going to do is I realized we've got sort of about 15 minutes left, but Dave, I'm going to come to that in a second, Derrick. And Dave,
really quick? I would say the one thing that I think most of these guys have done is not traditional social media, but media in other ways. Whether you're in Benefits Canada, you're submitting articles or other things where you're kind of reinforcing your presence and who you are and all that kind of stuff. And I think most of us have gotten business directly or indirectly through that type of stuff, just from being out there. I don't know if that's a fair statement, but
maybe
thinking beyond.
It's not an unfair statement, Dave, but I would like to add the most effective marketing that you can do is referral-based marketing. So a lot of my relationships are with accountants, lawyers, as I said earlier, commercial writers, and not just waiting for business to come to you, but feed them with articles, feed them with information. There are outlets out there, as Dave has alluded to, that provide a lot of information that would be most helpful to accountants. It's amazing how many accountants are out there who live in a world where they don't get this information. They don't get tax information that might be helpful. They don't get benefits information that might be helpful for their clients. And you'd be surprised, once you start doing that over a very short period of time, they'll start sending you leads, people that they deal with who need some assistance.
So thank you.
Can I add one thing to that? Just
Yeah,
talking about social, what I find is more important than social media is the branding.
Yeah.
Taking your content and taking content that you can find on the web and repurposing it with your brand on there. There's some people on this call who have, we talked before about goals for 2025. Nigel is one person. Lori Power is another person. They've done things that I loved. Nigel with his LTD spreadsheet, Lori with her information on moving carriers. One of my goals for 2025 is to actually do my own content like they've done, but put my own brand on it. So some of these other people have inspired me. So I want to put, I can give this to clients. Like I did a one-page PDF for Bell Let's Talk last January with all the free government resources, put my brand on there. So yeah. It's the branding more than the social media, which I think is the important component that advisors need to look at.
Great. Excellent. Thank you all. Now, and I said I was going to ask everybody different questions, but here's a discussion that I want to have amongst the four of you. What is your best prospecting idea that you've had over your career, right? And how are you going to prospect in 2025? I know everybody would love to hear your answers as masters to these questions. So what's your best prospecting idea ever? And what are you going to do in 2025? Anyone want to go first?
I'll jump in just because I've already said most of it already. The best prospecting method that I use is to help accountants in particular be a smarter accountant with their clients.
Yep.
And that I think is very powerful. Helping a commercial insurance advisor who's been commoditized, as I think Chris alluded to that earlier, or maybe it was Blake, who are in a commoditized business, help them to decommoditize their business and build client relationships as opposed to customer relationships.
Blake?
So I'd say it was funny because someone asked the question about joining a Chamber of Commerce plan, and we've been members of those, and you get to talk to either an insurance or investment guy. But we joined quite a fair number of different associations, and it's a 3, 4, 10-year game where you're going to these events, you're networking and meeting people, and someone's going to have a problem, someone's going to have an issue, and then they're going to come to you as a trusted advisor, not as a cold person who's trying to solve a problem. And you start solving problems for 3 or 4 people in that group, and next thing you know, another 4 or 5 are now phoning you. And so that's by far been our best prospecting tool is joining associations, but more importantly, being involved with them long term. You're not going to get any sales out of it year one, and if you're trying to, no one there's going to like you because you're going to be way too salesy.
Yeah, so it's the long game. It's the long game. Chris, what about yourself?
HR groups. For the last year and a half, Rob, I made a commitment to myself to exhibit at a whole slew of tech events. And I mean, I was just exhibiting last week in Ottawa. So I've probably exhibited 9 events over the last 14 months. Each event cost me between $5,000 and $10,000.
Yep.
And total leads in that time, 7, maybe if lucky, and 0 conversions. So I've whittled it down to a list of 1 that I would actually do again. Those exhibits, not worth it. But the HR groups, where I've also been focusing on, that's where I'm getting more traction. So HR, if you're working in one specific industry, find an HR group that's aligned with that one specific industry and partner with them.
Michael?
Yeah, so for me, I'm part of a group called BNI, so Business Networking International. Not sure if people are aware of that one, but that's um, a not quite like a chamber scenario, but it's a chapter, or they have multiple chapters, and within each chapter, they only allow 1 person per discipline. So I am the group benefits person for my chapter. And to kind of Derek's point, you get to relationships with the accountant, the bookkeeper, HR consultant, and everybody else in their different disciplines and industries. And the process there is that you train all the other members of the chapter about what you do. So they become your sales force. So, the office cleaner will also, I've gotten leads from the office cleaner. I've got leads from some of the most unlikely people, like a painter who does stuff. So you never know where your leads will come from, but you educate people, and that B&I group has been probably my best choice for prospecting and will continue to be.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Blake,
Rob,
I have a question for you. What do you think the biggest mistake other advisors are, what do you think the biggest mistake other advisors are making? You walk into a situation, you either take over a client, or you're being interviewed because they're not happy with their current advisor, like the situation I was speaking about a moment ago. What are the biggest mistakes, in your opinion, that other advisors are making?
I think for sure overpromising. It's real easy to make a bunch of promises to try to get a letter signed or gain a client, and then underdeliver on those. And then there's a lot of advisors who just aren't present. Like those would be the 2 biggest mistakes of just not being there in a timely manner to address issues for sure.
Yeah, so it's overpromising, under-delivering. Yeah.
Yeah.
Derrick, what
And
about you? Oh, sorry, go on.
sorry, I'll just add one last thing too, is, and also just not discussing options with clients too, right? Like we got clients where like ASO, sorry, Rob, plug your ears. Like ASO is not for them. They don't have the risk tolerance. They're too small, whatever the reason is. Every 3 or 4 years, we still bring it up to them because things change and items change. And a lot of times you talk to someone or maybe it's just a healthcare spending account or critical illness on a group plan. Like just, it could be the littlest thing where they're like, this is a great idea. I wonder why my current advisor didn't even recommend it. And all it is just throwing on CI onto your group plan. So just making sure you're delivering kind of all options available to them.
Yeah, I think it's important to ask your clients because your clients the question every single time you meet with them, what's going on in their business, because business cycles change. Business cycles change. Hey, people that make boxes are doing really well though right now because of Amazon, right? Everything goes in a box. They can't buy enough boxes. The box business is going well. Well, that might change in the future, right?
Yeah,
So,
one of my favorite was we were chatting with a client, and he said, "You know what I want to do is for all of my hourly guys, we're going to put on critical illness because they get paid minimum wage, they can't really afford it." And he wanted to beef up the hourly plan for those guys and all of the executives. He's like, they can afford it all, and so we actually ended up doing the reverse of most plans and getting a beefier
yeah.
hourly plan with some of those real, like a $10,000 benefit might not be a bunch to a lot of people, but man, that means the world to some of those guys.
Well, it's probably the biggest check some of them have seen.
Hmm.
You know, Derrick, same thing because you're coming at the benefits business from a number of different perspectives. You're talking about holistic planning with, and living benefits and so on. And then, hey, now that we've taken care of this, let's talk about benefits. But what mistakes in the relationship are advisors making that you've seen?
Um, Fundamentally, using this before you use these. I find that a lot of advisors are not asking questions of the then customer, and jumping to the conclusion that their ideas are the right things immediately. You have to listen to people. You have to get to know them, get to know who they are, get to know what their business is, get to know their dreams and their aspirations and their goals. Understand who people are, and be patient. Don't rush to the conclusions and don't rush to the application before you know what the issue is. And that's not a new phenomenon. That's happened since the turn of time. And I just find that you know the just walk before you run. Like, honest to God, it's not everything we do is not seriously rocket science. If we just apply the basic skill sets of understanding we're dealing with humans that run a business that don't operate in the employee benefits or in the planning area, they make widgets. And who are we to walk into their office and tell them that everything they've done in the planning area has been wrong? And I've got all the solutions for them. And here they are. And here's the price. I don't think it works that way. Listen to them, understand, ask questions, and then solve the problem.
Favorite question you like to ask, Derrick?
If we could fast forward 15 years, where would you like your business to be?
It's like the question I like to ask. If we were
I
meeting
know. I learned it from you, buddy.
we were
And you know
meeting
what? It's not hokey at all. It's true. If you ask people, where do you see yourself 15 years from now with your life, your business, your family? And let them talk. Let them talk. Let them tell the story.
about 15 years from now. It's dark in here. Let me out. Why is it so cold?
Not
Mike,
funny, Rob.
no, sorry. Michael,
Yes, sir.
you started 9 years ago. You left you left that paycheck every Friday and you started 9 years ago. Is this a great business to get into?
100%. I think that's the obvious answer to that question. I think from what you've heard over the last hour and a half in various ways, shapes, and forms, um, you get control. Like as a owner of a business, a small business, and advisor, you have a lot of control over your work-life balance in life, that you don't get in many other industries. The industry itself is dynamic. It's simple, to Derek's point. Like, it's a very simple world that we live in, but there's so many options that you can bring. So every day is different. Every client is different. Every prospect is different. So there's never a static situation, and there's always something new. So you always have some reason to uh, keep in touch and understand what's happening, what's developing in the industry, to again help yourself bring value to clients. So it's stimulating, and again, it's a great business to do. And again, from the insurance side of things, group is great because it's renewable, right? I mean, people talk about, Derek, when it comes to selling life insurance, you have those high net worth life insurance agents that sell a policy they make $1 million off of. Great, but then once he's done it, it's gone, and you got to find another one. Whereas at least in group benefits, if you do a good job with your clients, they remain loyal, and it's a renewable business. It keeps your cash flow going from that perspective. So it provides you peace of mind from that perspective. But it's, again, pretty dynamic.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask each of you, we've got 4 minutes left, but real quick, what question didn't I ask that you'd like to answer? We've been talking for 85 minutes. What question didn't I ask that you'd like to answer? Any last words?
I'll go with, you didn't ask me specifically about success. And I think everyone said their answer. The idea of success is very different. But for me, in my stage of my career as development, looking at people who I met, who I aspire to be like, my ultimate idea of success, or one element of it, being able to choose my client, right? I'm still in a growth mode right now, so I'm not quite chasing everything with a pulse. However, I do still believe I can save everybody, and will be willing to work on it. Whereas those that have been established well enough, they can say, you know what, like Blake said and Dave says, you're not a client for me. Go find someone else. Once I get to that stage, then I'm good.
Chris?
So, question wasn't asked was, what was your biggest fail or regret?
Yep.
For me, I always thought the holy grail was going to be partnering with a P&C firm, and it was going to be, like drinking from a fire hydrant and an endless supply of leads. And I thought, wow, I've got to step up on everybody else because it was my ex-wife's P&C firm. She was third generation. I thought, I'm going to get all these leads. And as people in CGIB know, I am a numbers person, a spreadsheet nerd, and I started tracking leads that I was giving them versus what they were giving me. And over a 10-year window, it was 246 to them versus 17 for me. And I had put so much time and effort. Before I started working on tech, I focused primarily on their P&C firm, and I spent 2 years going out with renewal calls and didn't get a single one, Rob. So, I always tell everyone, yeah, it works for some people, but it is not the holy grail for benefits advisors aligning with the P&C firm.
One at a time. One sale at a time. Blake, what did I ask you? What do you want to end on?
I think for me, it would be kind of one time you made just a massive difference or something like that, because it was I'll try to be real short with this story, but it was the CFO of my contact at the company who was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And there was about 6 or 8 weeks of back and forth with the insurance company, and the claim for drug ended up getting denied. And they gave about 3 or 4 different reasons. And so I ended up getting heavily involved. And I remember going to the Denny's by the airport, and I met Jim Pino, for those of you who remember him back in the Manulife days. So there's 2 guys in suits, the only 2 suits. I think everybody else was in track pants at this Denny's. And we're going through this, and it was an $80,000 a year drug. And long story short is it should have been declined 2 months ago because it was approved by Health Canada only after the cancer had metastasized, and this guy's cancer hadn't metastasized yet. And all these new studies were, if you take this, your cancer doesn't metastasize and it keeps you around. And so on a compassionate basis, Manulife paid that claim. And he, I guess about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this was, and he just retired earlier this year and called me as he was going over the border to the States. And it was one of those things where, had it not been the CFO and got me involved and led to that meeting with Jim, he's probably not around anymore. And so we really can make a huge difference in this business.
Derrick, thank you. Derrick?
I think the one thing you didn't ask is are any of us planning to retire out of this business? And
I don't know. That's not in my vocabulary. I don't know what that word means.
well, I was going to say, I have no intention of retiring, but I will transition. And as I mentioned earlier, Rebecca will take over my business, and I'll work for her instead of the other way around. I love going to meetings where at the age of 62, I'm actually right on the average age of an independent advisor. That's kind of cool. It's a great business. Why would we ever want to give it up?
We spent an hour and a half together. And on behalf of everybody that's here, Blake, Chris, Michael, Derrick, from the bottom of our hearts, we want to thank you for sharing your stories, your wisdom, your knowledge with us, for the last 90 minutes. It's been a terrific time. I know the chat box has been vibrant with comments and so on, and thanks to all that participated. And Lawrence, you had a great comment as well, but really appreciate it. We had 100 and close to 140 people on this call at its peak, so thank you all very much. You're going to get a 1.5 CE credits for participating today. Mike's going to send those out. We are open for business. We've got a session coming up. I think it's the 4th of December on travel insurance. We've got Melissa Blanchette from Green Shield. That is coming up. It's going to be a great session on travel insurance, especially during the time because a lot of clients like to travel in the winter, but it's just something from an advisor perspective that you want to participate in because it is a benefit that's often overlooked and undervalued, but it's an incredible liability, as Michael shared with us earlier. And again, gentlemen, your comments, the discussion we had was terrific. I thank you for your honesty and I thank you for participating. All of us, thank you for participating today. And we wish you and everybody continued success in the future. On behalf of all of us at the Benefits Trust, 2 thumbs up. Let's go sell some things. We got a month left in the year. We're open for business and we want to hear from you. So we're going to send you a survey. Let us know how we did today and let us know what we can do better in the future. Thank you all very much and have a great day. Bye for now.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone.